Our welcome to our esteemed speakers and request our moderator, Mr. Nikhil Swani, Chairman of CII Triveni Water Institute and Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Triveni Tribune Limited, to kindly chair and guide the discussion ahead. Thank you. We are also honored to have Ms. Debashri Mukherjee, Special Secretary of Ministry of Jal Shakti. I extend our warm welcome, ma'am. Thank you.
Hello. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Could I request you to take your seats so we could start this session? Seema, can I request your help? So while people settle down, I'll make my introductory remarks. I know that everyone here is here to listen to our esteemed speakers. So firstly, a very, very warm welcome and good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to address this 18th Sustainability Summit, Strengthening Global Partnerships for Sustainable, Equitable, and Inclusive Development. It's an honor to share this dais today with some exceptional speakers who've joined me here today to talk about creating a water-secure future in India. A very warm welcome, especially to Madam Debashri Mukherjee, who is the Special Secretary in the government at this point in time, but taking over very, very shortly as a Secretary. So many congratulations on that, ma'am, and thank you for being with us today. Also, a very warm welcome to Ajit, Sanjeev, and Rupali. India today faces a great challenge to creating as well as enforcing sustainable water systems in the country. Factors such as rapid urbanization, population growth, and changing climate patterns threaten some of the most vulnerable populations of our country. The country hosts about 18% of the world's population and yet holds only about 4% of the world's water resources, making India one of the most water-stressed countries. According to India's Composite Water Management Index, 600 million people in the country are suffering from acute shortage of water. Additionally, the increase in water demand across various sectors, such as agriculture and industry, put pressure on existing water resources in India. Climate change will exacerbate this pressure on water resources as the frequency and intensity of floods and droughts in the country increases. Creating a water-secure future in India is a need of the hour and a critical and multifaceted challenge that requires collaboration across all sectors. It is here that stakeholders will join to create a holistic and sustainable approach to water use, conservation, and management. Addressing water security, conservation, and management challenges yields co-benefits that ripple across society. Improved water efficiency enhances agricultural productivity, ensuring food security, and boosting rural economies. Clean water access reduces waterborne diseases, improving public health and reducing healthcare costs. Sustainable water management and conservation practices foster climate resilience as well by optimizing water resource use during droughts and floods. Effective water management practices reduce industrial water use, lowering energy consumption and emission. Overall, all these efforts promote economic growth, environmental conservation, and community well-being. It is also incumbent upon industry to act in its most responsible manner to enhance it or to reduce this risk and build its own resilience in its watersheds and ecosystems by investing in infrastructure, encouraging adoption of sustainable water use practices, promoting a participatory approach, and encouraging collaborative approaches in water conservation and management systems, but equally to support the government to implement and enforce effective water policies. It is my understanding that approximately 25% of all aquifers or all water basins in the country are either stressed or critical, which leads to an impending risk with industry which rely on groundwater as their sustainable source for business. It is imperative that industry forms a collaborative partnership so that they can recharge aquifers and work with their stakeholders in agriculture in those water basins. I'm also happy to share that Niti Aayog, in association with the CII-Triveni Water Institute, has recently published guidelines on achieving water neutrality for Indian industry, an outcome of extensive research and deliberations across various stakeholders and consensus of various ministries. The guidelines lay out a standard definition and approach of water neutrality for industries. These will help save water, leading to an efficient use and enabling evaluation and validation of the water neutrality claims of the industry. The Water Institute also has vast experience of conducting comprehensive water audits to help improve operational water use efficiencies. It also applies its world-class tools such as WattScan, which is a satellite-based temporal assessment or spatial and temporal assessment tool, for implementing a science-based water management solution for building resilience towards a rising climate variability in the availability of water. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know that you've come here to hear our guests speak, so it is with great pleasure that I would like our first speaker and keynote speaker, Ms. Debashree Mukherjee, to address us. Ms. Mukherjee has held various portfolios in the water sector itself, both at the state level as well as in the center. She's worked in the PMO and is known as a lady who has a deep passion for this space, as well as being, I think, referred to as India's water woman. So thank you very much, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, Nikhilji. It's a privilege to be here today for this discussion. I'm going to try and keep my remarks brief because I hope we can move into interactive mode to answer questions, issues that you raise. So I will not repeat the challenges that Nikhilji has already mentioned. The fact that India has 4% of the freshwater reserves of the world and 18% of the world population. But in terms of emphasis, I just want to say that, even that, the spatial distribution is extremely uneven. For instance, the Brahmaputra basin is water rich. And there are large basins in the country which are hugely water deficit. So we really have a very strong water security challenge. And this is not just about lack of water resources, which is already acting as an inhibitor of growth. I think a lot of industries here all know that you cannot put up a new industry extracting groundwater in areas which are classified as what we call the dark blocks, overexploited. So water availability or lack of it is a growth inhibitor. Also, poor water management of our water resources, we have seen evidence in the last month what devastation it can cause. The floods in Uttarakhand, the floods in Himachal Pradesh, Delhi. The issue of management of our rivers, the issue of floodplain management is critical, not just for water security, but overall, disaster resilience, managing climate risk, all of that. So climate change is already affecting the water cycle. And what is predicted for the next 50 years is we will have possibly an equal amount of water, if not a little more, but we will have more intense precipitation and longer dry spells, which basically means cropping patterns may have to change, which means sowing seasons will change. So there are lots of impacts of the climate change and the change in the water cycle that we need to work on in terms of looking at technology, in terms of prediction, in terms of analyzing data. Now, what are the two big responses that we can think of to make ourselves more water secure? And in terms of that, we've been thinking, the two big responses that we're looking at is in the area of storage. We need to store. And where do we store? When we talk about storage, we think of dams and reservoirs, but that's not the only way. Now, in terms of dams and reservoirs, the storage in dams and reservoirs, and we are not going to be able to build too many big dams in future. Given the issues of, one, the best sites are mostly taken. Second is that, land acquisition and the rehabilitation issues have become increasingly more difficult. So, Government of India's strategy has been to make the most of the existing infrastructure. So, Government of India is in collaboration with the states because, again, all action lies in the states. So, in collaboration with the states, we are implementing the largest dam rehabilitation program in the world, looking at structural issues, looking at operation and maintenance, looking at rule curves which look at hydrological cycles, so that the existing expensive water infrastructure is managed better and is more fit for purpose. Then we come to this issue of local storage, which is surface storage, and a part of this is which cannot be done, cannot be managed without making water everybody's business. One is map where the water bodies are, protection of water bodies from encroachment. The third is actually ensuring desilting and proper management of water bodies. Through the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, which is a national call to action, annual before the rains, we are trying to do all three. The work is done by the states, but there is a nudge role, a leadership role of Government of India, and also a process of trying to help states map their water bodies. So surface storage. You're also aware of the mission Amrit Sarovar, which is again trying to create more surface storage. But the largest storage lies beneath our feet, groundwater. And groundwater management is an area which has, groundwater powered our green revolution. But we are reaching the limits of that extraction. So groundwater mapping, managing extraction, and recharge and conservation. These are the three big needs going forward. The second big, I'm just talking about trying to keep it brief. The second big area is looking at improving water use efficiency. And I'm very happy to hear about the work that is being done in industry, the water neutrality. But the elephant in the room is agriculture. So how do we ensure agriculture uses about 83%, 83 to 88%, estimates vary, 83% of the overall water use in the country today. So going forward in the next decade, our big target is to improve water use efficiency in agriculture. Multiple strategies, marrying technology, community action, awareness building, and measurement. So, and also looking at how irrigation systems, which are mainly, engineering, we build them and we forget them, they need to transform into service provision systems. So that is the big, the big challenge before us today. State, center, you name it. The third big strand is about, you cannot do this without behavior change and involving communities. You're aware of the Jal Jeevan mission, where access to water at the household level. 60% of the JJM infrastructure is based on groundwater. So sustainability of the investments that we make under JJM. The management of, there is a program called Atal Bhujal Yojana that is being, where the work is going on to create water-aware rural communities that will plan their own water budgets and take charge of their water security. How much water do we have? How much can go into these crops? What can we grow? But again, as water is multidisciplinary, There are a huge range of issues, and we need to work together, get out of our silos. And governments, civil society, industry, public and private sector, communities, communities, communities. So water security for India cannot be achieved without everybody working together. Stop here, and I hope we can, get into more detail during the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. You've brought up many questions during your very brief introductory remarks. The issues that water is a state subject, and the impending need for us to focus much more on aquifer and aquifer mapping and areas such as that, and ultimately a collaborative approach towards it. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have some introductory remarks, and then I'll pose some questions to the panelists. But following which, and hopefully if we have time, I would request the audience members to collectively ask some questions. So if you could keep your questions ready in hand, and I'll get someone to circulate a mic at the right point in time. Next, we have, on the issue of water efficiency that was brought up by Ms. Mukherjee, we have our next speaker, Mr. Ajit Radhakrishnan, who is the Senior Specialist and Country Coordinator of 2030 WRG, the Water Resources Group with the World Bank. Ajit, could you give some introductory remarks as well as touch upon your approach towards water use efficiency?
Thanks, Nikhil. And ma'am, a pleasure to listen to you always. And I think if anyone in India needs a ready reckoner with regard to the priorities of India's water sector, I think that's what you heard just now from the ma'am. So you have the priorities clearly laid out, and you also have got a glimpse of what the challenges in India are when it comes to water. Now, where we work, and especially the Water Resources Group of the World Bank works with regard to the private sector and also with the government, is in the interface of building the relationship between the private sector and the government to work together. So we create these stakeholder platforms for collective action between the private sector and the government. In the states where we work with the support of the state government and the private sector, we primarily focus on water use efficiency, and that, as Debashri ma'am said, the focus is on agriculture because that's where the bulk of the water gets used. Now, promoting water use efficiency in agriculture would be seen largely like pushing more of drip pipes and drip technology or sprinklers into the field. But more than that, I think some of the points that she mentioned also need to be covered. Now, we have had experience developing and establishing public-private partnerships in promoting community-scale micro-irrigation in Karnataka, in Maharashtra, and now in UP. In all these cases, we find that the technology needs to be kind of simplified through service delivery models. So what we have done is to simplify the process of subsidy distribution, creation of institutions that would further simplify the institution and deployment of technologies. So the GGRC model, the Gujarat Green Revolution Company model, is often quoted to be one of the best practices in promoting micro-irrigation. So that has been adapted and tweaked with the industry support in Uttar Pradesh and also in UP and also in Maharashtra. Now, what we find interesting here is that the role of community institutions that she did mention, which is the water use associations and also the community institutions on the ground. You might think that when it comes to PPPs, these are insignificant, but the real case is that the PPPs have a higher transaction cost if the water use associations are dysfunctional. And this we have seen in Karnataka when we started off with 25,000 hectares of automated micro-irrigation in Ramthal. There again, we found that the model fails because the community institutions are unable to bear the transaction cost or otherwise are not party to the transactions that happen. So the private sector bears a higher cost because of the dysfunctional community institutions, which governance is a quality issue, and that needs to be addressed. The second case that we saw in Maharashtra was a different model other than the BOT model in Karnataka or the hybrid annuity model in Karnataka. Was the government came up with an RFP inviting the private sector to work in specified blocks of irrigation command areas. There, they started setting up, I think 6 consortia were set up to kind of work with the private sector, community institutions, academic institutions, and the private sector. And there again, we see from the latest third-party evaluations that the water use efficiency has gone up by 47 to 50%, more than half. So there again, we see that there are institutions that play a defining role in making a PPP model a success or not. Finally, in UP, it's a different model. In Uttar Pradesh, the government recently announced the UP micro-irrigation program, where companies are now working hand in glove with the government to promote micro-irrigation at scale. Here, as you all know, UP would have a larger command area, irrigation command area, and the number of small farmers in UP is also on the higher side. So you have 90-95% of small farmers. There we are thinking about, again, a service delivery model where we could work with women entrepreneurs to see how irrigation can be rolled out as a service to small-scale farmers. So I think innovations in terms of institutional delivery or institutional capacity building also need to go alongside technology if we were to kind of make it successful. And the last point I just would want to make or emphasize is also on the market side of it. So if you think that technology alone can bring you success or impacts, that's not the case in agriculture at least, where we would need to kind of focus working with the off-takers from the market side. So in all these cases where the community irrigation has succeeded, we have had very strong buyers from the off-taker side. So there were always tri-party agreements between farmers, government, and the private sector, which offered the stability for the PPP model to succeed in terms of micro-irrigation and also agriculture-led reforms there. One interesting area that is coming up is also the wastewater reuse in agriculture. So this is, again, Maharashtra has tried this in Aurangabad with wastewater STPs entering into water purchase agreement with farmer producer organizations or water use associations. So there again, there is a healthy kind of field for innovation, and technology is again a game changer when it comes to water, both in water use efficiency and across the board in agriculture. I will be happy to take up more questions, Nikhil. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ajit. Since you did bring up the topic of irrigation and micro-irrigation and agriculture, I think it's best to go to Rupali next. Rupali Mehra is with Spoudi. Rupali, what has been your experience in terms of working in this sector? And maybe you could educate the audience on some of your insights.
Sure, thanks, Nikhil, and lovely to be in this panel with all of you, and welcome to the audience as well. Our focus, so there has been a lot of, I think, macro focus. We heard Ms. Mukherjee as well as Ajit talk about what's being done at a large scale level. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, but before that, just sort of also making of, putting it in context that globally, we know that 1/3 of our global food production is at in smallhold farms, and we know that these 500 million smallhold farms employ about 2 billion people. So I'll leave the macro picture there, and then now zoom into what we do. We've realized, and when we started exploring what the markets for the company that I work with, Spoudi, should be, there are a couple of challenges that hit home very early. One was that we have the technology, but how is there going to be an uptake on technology for irrigation among smallhold farmers who produce, say, 1/3 of our global food? We know that technology reaches large-scale agriculturalists and food production companies as well as large farmers pretty easily. But where we saw a gap was technology being married to smallhold farming. And that's where we saw a market opportunity, but we also realized that there are several pieces of that puzzle that need to come together for this to really work well. So at Spoudi, we're looking to bring innovation to smallhold farming, and we've had several projects in India. Spoudi is a Swedish company, but we have had over the last 3 or 4 years several projects in India, largely in the Western Belt, also in Southern India and Northern India. What we see is that when farmers do take up, say, innovation and technology, they have seen their food, they have seen an increase in their own harvest, which then leads to better profitability. And importantly, since we are talking about water, they are able to use up to 80% less water using solar-powered precision irrigation than with flood farming. However, it sounds nice on paper. A technology comes in and we claim to make this, this massive change. It sounds nice, but how do you kind of adopt it? And that's when we started exploring this question deeper. How do we make smallholder farming more productive, more innovative, and stress the water table less than what it does? And we realized that we need to create an ecosystem to actually enable smallholder farmers to uptake the technology. Spouty is the technology partner. So we, what we do is that our solar-powered precision irrigation pump is, which is a patented pump, that can help move water and reduce the stress on the water table for farming. However, we need to create an ecosystem. So we have been working with financiers, with lending institutions, with governments, as well as with communities and NGOs to bring as well as training institutions, so that we kind of create an entire ecosystem which enables the farmer to be a smarter farmer, or kind of adopt a better technology than what they usually do. We've seen changes on the ground in Gujarat, in Maharashtra, as well as some parts of Rajasthan where we have worked. But this is kind of our approach to food production and reducing the water stress of growing food.
No, congratulations, Rupali. Wearing my agronomist hat from a previous profession that I had, I know that it's very complicated, the issues of pathology, entomology at the farmhold level. And when you have interventions which you have to simplify the communication to the farmer, which has multiple benefits in productivity, it really is world-changing. And as both Ajit and Ms. Mukherjee had pointed out, this is the need of the hour to be able to deliver this now on the cost-effective manner that you'd put across. How can we make sure that farmers are able to afford it? Maybe the concept should be irrigation as a service rather than have farmers bear that out. But I think that's a different discussion. Maybe we can touch upon it in the question and answers. Sanjeev, you represent Groundforce, and you have your products go into both the irrigation side of the landscape, but also equally into industry. What insights would you like to share with the audience today towards building a more resilient, water-secure future?
Thank you, Nikhil. And really thankful to CII for us being here, and really privileged for such a learned set of panelists today. So we at Groundforce are almost into everything. We are #1 pump and water management company. So we deal in industry, commercial building services, domestic, as well as the irrigation and municipalities. So like I just remember a line about water, and it is very paradox, means we just have two meanings of it, that water is available in abundance, that is our earth's surface is 70% water. Still it is one of the most scarce element. We have only 0.5% of it usable, and like ma'am was also saying, 18% of world population and only 4% of water, fresh water for us, of which again 80+% is used for irrigation, 10+%, more than 10, rather 12% for industry, and remaining for domestic. So what we have seen that, and saying these numbers, actually it scares us also, but it gives us a hope, it gives us an opportunity, and it gives us a challenge that we need to act today. We have been discussing, we have been debating and planning, but now everything lies in acting. So, and it is a better time to act now, because we see In history, we have never seen floods and droughts happening together. Right now, we are able to see floods and droughts happening together in same countries in different parts. So this is actually water stress as well as the climate stress. So having said that, what we do, I'll touch upon almost every aspect. So when we see industry, and in general, 80%, it is estimated 80% of the water goes untreated into the ecosystem. So it becomes a responsibility of each and everyone, including industry, agriculture, as well as domestic users, that how do we use it. In India also, it is estimated that around 30% of water is treated. Can the efficiency be increased? Do we have a number of increased efficiency and how much it can be increased? So at Groomforce, we have partnered with the industry partners also, wherein we help industries conserving or reusing around 90% of water. So that is the efficiency level where we can go. What actually happens in processing water for industry? We see normally 3 cycles in that case. One is the physical treatment, which is basically the sand filtration or the membrane filtration. Then we have chemical treatment, basically disinfections and other dosing things coming into the picture. And the final thing is the biological thing, wherein we add bacteria and minerals which happen to be reused for, again, making it clean and usable. So at Groomforce, we provide almost solutions for the complete cycle so that industry is better able to save on the complete cycle rather than just physically treating it and saving only a portion. Then in terms of agriculture, like ma'am was also saying, one of the scariest thing in India is that almost 90% of the groundwater is used for irrigation. And most of them is bore wells, which are today, it's a challenge because we had a green revolution because of the bore wells. It happened, India became agriculturally independent. We need now water revolution because that itself led to the water crisis which is happening in most parts of the country. So in terms of that also, we need better bowl management system, better water management system, wherein technology, intelligence, remote monitoring, remote sensing, as well as intelligent algorithms can be put in place, which we are doing in many different parts of the country. In terms of say domestic and building services, we again see much of the water being lost. Like today we are in a building sitting here, in much of the water can be conserved here. So with the best use of the circulating systems, best use of the hydropneumatic systems. When it comes to sewage treatments, STP, we again see a reluctance in adopting, though the government as well as the institutions have made it mandatory almost everywhere, but we see a reluctance from industries or as well as the personal things because it involves high capex, concrete and everything is involved. Whereas we also come out with a system wherein we try to give a portable STP system, so that only a digging well and immediately it can be installed. It saves time as well as the money, and the payback periods are much, much lesser. So with this, at Groomforce, we are trying to help consumers wherever water is there, so we are there and we try to help the consumers. I would just try to conclude my line, remembering one of the quotes from Swami Vivekananda, that situations are going to remain as it is not going to improve. We have to improve ourselves to make the situation much better for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. So, Ms. Mukherjee, if I may come to you first in the question segment. The government of India has, I believe, for the first time over the last several years, spent more money than I think in the collective history of India in this sector. The Jal Jeevan Mission itself, I think, has spent over $20–30 billion. We have many other programs such as NMCG. How do you see the question that was brought up by Sanjeev as well, the increased uptake of recycle that is required by industry towards agriculture, the fact that the government is ready and willing to put the capital outlay to ensure that we provide the services to individual citizens, but at the same time we build an ecosystem. Where do you think the opportunities lie for us to be able to get to this path of resilience quicker, but also equally, where are the hindrances and where should the focus be? You touched upon this, I think, a little bit earlier in your opening remarks, but if you could elaborate on that a little bit, please.
Right. So I'm going to try and answer this question and I'll focus on circularity of water. So I think one of the first steps is reduce. So if we can reduce consumption, we recycle less because recycling has a cost. There have been major investments in water treatment infrastructure. Namami Gange is a case in point. To start with, it was an investment of 20,000 crore, entirely funded by central government. States, Amrit has another large envelope of investment in sanitation services, most of it which is water treatment. And the Namami Gange program has also, beyond the investment that it has brought in, also brought focus onto operation and management of wastewater treatment infrastructure. So one, the role of the private sector, and through the hybrid annuity model, it's trying to address the critical issue that we had in wastewater treatment, which was that you build infrastructure, and the build infrastructure is used at maybe 40% capacity, 50% capacity, 60% capacity. So the hybrid annuity model actually incentivizes operation, maintenance, and use. That's one. And this has been taken up by the states. So this is becoming more the norm rather than the just build infrastructure and the utility tries to operate it, which there is a divergence between the quality of building and the quality of operation. To come to the issue of circularity of water and industry using treated water, I think it is also linked to groundwater regulation and management, where industry finds it easier to extract groundwater, where industry finds it cheaper to extract groundwater, then it is unlikely that the industry will pay the charges for treated water. So therefore, the issue is also how effectively are we regulating groundwater use in areas where there is a problem with regard to groundwater. So that is one issue, and here we're working with the states to do that. The second, in terms of circularity, is also, where best can that water be used? So this is about area planning. I have a treated water source. This treated water source, remember, transportation of treated water also has a cost. So if I'm reusing it in agriculture, I have to treat it to a certain level. If I reuse it for industry, I treat it to another level. There is a cost to this. So this is a process of, and this is being led by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, where there is a certain degree of, we are looking at a comprehensive approach to use of treated water. However, I think in this strategizing, industry has a major role. The question is mapping use, seeing where best use is possible. So we actually don't say that, the only use should be in industry. It is the best use. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. I don't know if I've answered this question, but I'll stop here and maybe get into greater detail later.
Thank you, but you did bring up an important part about the fact that we can't view water as a right and more as a commodity. There is an economic price to it, and yes, for drinking water, it is an essential commodity, and we have to provide rights towards that. But Ajit, in your view, when you go to states, how willing are states to view water from a pricing perspective? How willing are they to charge users in some capacity or the other? Because very frankly, people take the easiest option and would extract groundwater because it is essentially free for them to do so.
I think a lot of this depends on the regulatory environment in the state, and also how strong institutions you have at the state level. Because what we see in Maharashtra, for example, where there's a strong regulator, Maharashtra Water Resources Regulatory Authority, which has got a tariff rate that is reflecting the realities in the sector, It has got a mandate for 100% treatment and 30% reuse. So it's very progressive in setting the goals for the state, in setting the tariffs for the state. But when it comes to agriculture, unfortunately, most of the states do not have a tariff regime for that matter that reflects the value of water. The pricing of water is still a sensitive issue because of multiple reasons, and that the fact that we are dealing with 95% of small and marginal farmers. So I think with regard to agriculture, of course, there is a barrier when it comes to a political barrier, and also when it comes to pricing, we haven't valued water. The true value or the true cost of water has not been estimated to a large extent when it comes to agriculture. But I think the new area that ma'am was mentioning, which is wastewater reuse, is an opportunity for us to venture into kind of tariff discussions, because wastewater reuse, as she rightly pointed out, would need to have a certain level of quality for different sectors. And what we see from our limited experience is that when it comes to agriculture and also for industries, they prefer water to be treated at a secondary treated level. You don't need a tertiary treated water quality for most of the industries, and secondary treated water is sufficient for most of the businesses, which then kind of determine which business processes they need to use their water for. Now with agriculture, again, secondary treated water is of good quality. If it is not from the informal water reuse side, then I think there is again a possibility for intervening. So here in Maharashtra, which is again leading the states with regard to such progressive measures, they have put in place a tariff where the water purchase agreements between the farmers and the STP operator has to be reflecting the MWRA tariff regimes. So there again, there is a innovation there. What we see in the industry case, and specifically taking the case of textiles, for example, we've been working with the textile clusters in 4 states for the past 2 years. We've been collecting data from almost 190 companies who work in the textile sector. What we see is that some of the technologies actually drive up the cost. So, for example, if you compare Tamil Nadu with Gujarat, the cost of treated water in Tamil Nadu is at least 5 times more than what you get in Gujarat. So the competitiveness of the industries is at stake when you actually look at the technology that is being put to use because of a certain compliance issue that the Tamil Nadu industries have to meet, and the technology is driving the cost up there. So there needs to be some level of moderation with regard to the cost when it comes to treated water, the tariff regimes, by looking at technologies that are suitable for industrial purposes. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ajit. I'm sure Rupali and Sanjeev would find that music to their ears that if we can come to a tariff regime, it allows for efficiency to be really put at in a very objective manner, and so therefore decisions are based on the reality of costs. Would you like to add anything on that, Rupali or Sanjeev, on the issue of water pricing and how that?
I guess it is very well explained. One more thing is on the industry part of the water pricing, as well as also might be will just touch upon the municipality, because municipality regulates or monetizes those water bills. However, in a general municipality, if you see normally in India, I'm talking about, you see 30% of losses happening inside the pipelines due to the leakage and burst. So might be there also many technologies is already into place wherein we can save those leakages up to 100%. So efficiency of the municipality becomes 100%. So even those 30% loss of water need not be monetized. Rather, it incentivizes the industry as well as it can be brought cheaper.
I'm sure as long as there's an economic cost to it, it would provide for that investment. Ladies and gentlemen, I was hoping that I would have more time to question our panelists here, but I do want to take the opportunity to reach out to the audience. I do have more questions, but if I'm going to take 2 or 3 questions at the same time, if I could request you to there's one question here and there's one question at the back. If you could introduce yourself and also suggest who the question would be for, and then I'll take them together if you don't mind. So,
hello. My name is Indranil Seth, and I'm an environmental and sustainability consultant, basically an environmental engineer. My question is directed to Mrs. Debashri Mukherjee. You talked about efficient use of groundwater, and this question applies globally as well, but I'm talking in the Indian context. Urban versus semi-urban or rural. Urban runoff is huge. There is no groundwater recharge in urban areas. Rural areas, there is close to 90+% of groundwater recharge. Semi-urban, high levels of groundwater recharge. Urban areas, most of the NCR area, or any urban areas in India, there are a lot of industries. They use groundwater, as you said. So they are taking the groundwater, they are not recharging. So what about the groundwater credits? So if we are using a groundwater for your use and there is no recharge happening, so that's my question is, how do you address that? I mean, that's a question, I mean, nobody wants to talk about, because that's, the groundwater is being used, and I want to know the numbers, like rural use of groundwater, how much is that compared to urban use of groundwater? So today, when you talk about sustainability, you're talking about carbon credits, you're talking about this credit, that credit, water credits. What about within water credits, you have sub-credits like groundwater credits? Because groundwater is an issue globally.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you. We'll just take some more questions and then open it up. Back there, please.
Good morning. My name is Pushpendra Johri. I am from RMSI, which is a climate risk consulting firm, and water resource management obviously is an important area where we operate. My question is kind of a corollary to the previous question. What I am saying is that there is a natural circular water process, right? Water harvesting has been a technique that has been known to all of us for a very long time. Why are we not thinking of recharging the water at the source, rather than we are trying to do all the different things and trying to clean it up after it has been made dirty, and then putting so much of money and then trying to ask for that, if you are using treated water, I want to charge you for it. Rather than that, why don't we tell the industry that, okay, you do a partial cleanup, rest the nature will automatically take care of as you will do the water harvesting, and my aquifer will be recharged. So this is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Two more questions. So we'll just take the last two questions, one here and one in the front.
Good morning. My question is to
Could
the
you give your name, please? And
Commandant Pradeep, ex-Indian Coast Guard, working on sustainability now. Most of the water, we are using groundwater to meet the basic requirement of the drinking water. And that process, we are using so many sophisticated technologies, and again, RO has its wastage. To prevent that, the world has come up to the air water aggregators, where industries as a pilot to adopt that technology can meet their industrial drinking water requirement by this technology and promote it in a big way. And subsequently, the groundwater can be again and again circulated in a better way, meeting the industrial requirement.
Thank you. I think similar questions that have come from three. Last question, if I may take from you, please.
Hello. Okay. First of all, thank you very much. My name is Richu. I come from a society management company. What is that? We take care of integrated facility management, which includes sewage treatment plant management within the industries, within residential properties. And we operate in Delhi NCR, we operate in Gujarat, we operate in Telangana. Why I came to this seminar especially is to understand.
Your question, please.
Yeah, I'll come to the question, because herein the realities of the ground are very different. For example, I am talking about Gurgaon, I'm talking about Noida, I'm talking about Greater Noida, wherein government norms are very strict when it comes to sewage treatment plant management. And the residential societies, almost all new residential societies and industries have STP plants. But the seriousness of managing them, the costs of operating them, and the education, the urge, the necessity of managing them is not there. Maintenance of rainwater harvesting plants are not there. So what is happening? I don't know how much of we are aware. every society is digging its borewell deeper and deeper and deeper, and it is now happening every second year. So why I'm here, you are the leaders here, apart from this discussion, is there an engagement program? Are you doing something to partner with private organizations wherein people who, like us, who are actually on ground, we are suffering and trying to educate the customers that it is very important to maintain an STP, but they are saying budget nahi hai. We are trying to tell them, please clean your rainwater harvesting plants every year. Let's do it next year. So what can we do in collaboration with you? Is there an agenda or some plan like that? So I'm here for that, if you can tell me.
Well,
Thank you very much.
firstly, hopefully platforms like this do bring the conversation about. But Ms. Mukherjee, I think a lot of questions were directed towards you. I'll also like the rest of the panelists to also come in with their comments.
Thank you. I think what I heard there was one question about rural groundwater versus urban groundwater. So the short answer to the fact that do we know what quantum of groundwater is, gets recharged in rural areas versus how much gets recharged in urban areas is no. We don't maintain that kind of data. What we do have is that the Central Groundwater Board publishes an annual groundwater assessment report, which looks at areas. So normally the unit is a block, whether rural, whether urban. So Delhi will have maybe, I think Delhi has about 18 to 20 assessment units. So, so it is block-based, and that block can be part urban, part rural, but there will be multiple blocks that are only urban. So this data can be put together, but I cannot tell you this data right now. The other issue with regard to, how do you recharge groundwater in cities and urban areas, I think one of the major things is about city planning. How do you create a water resilient city? And this has to do with urban flooding as well. We are working with the Namami Gange program has just set up in the last year what they call a River Cities Alliance, which is trying to bring together cities that have rivers running through them. And this is about improved water management and recharge. So what are your water bodies? Map your water bodies. Ensure that your water bodies don't disappear. The second issue is that the model municipal bylaws, which have been adopted by all the states in the country, require buildings above a certain size to have rainwater harvesting structures. But as was pointed out, and correctly, the rainwater harvesting structures are not maintained as well as they should be. So and you cannot go into every house, government cannot go into every house to check on the, has your rainwater harvesting structure been maintained or not. So therefore, the need of the hour is to really create greater awareness. There is this Jal Shakti Abhiyan that we run every year since 2019, which tries to mobilize states, municipal bodies, communities to say, okay, the rains are coming. We need to take action to prepare for the rains. If there are water bodies, we need to desil them, your rainwater harvesting structures. But the message needs to be amplified so that it reaches every resident welfare association, it reaches village level communities. This amplification is very much work in progress. It cannot work unless we have, governments, state government, industry, community, media partnerships.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I've gotten 2 reminders by the organizers to say that we have run out of time already. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry that we're not going to get all the other panelists to comment on your questions, but they will be available post this session. So I'm taking the liberty to say that they can ask you questions outside. Ajit, I hope that's okay. So ladies and gentlemen, do join me in thanking the panelists and giving them a round of applause for their wonderful insights. It was a real pleasure. Of course, Seema, we need much more time on this subject next time. And I think the Water Institute will have its own summit later in this year. So hopefully we can build on some of the topics discussed. But thank you again, everyone. Have a good day.
As this session wraps up, I thank our esteemed dignitaries for their insightful discussion. Yeah, please kindly join us for a group photograph.